Hello, Mr. Workmeister's fourth period class. Today, we're going to learn about why the diesel engine was manufactured in the beginning and why it is now the leading engine that is used throughout the entire world. The diesel engine was originally made by a man named Rudolf Diesel in 1890, and he originally invented the engine to run off of peanut oil. Now, his engine was originally designed to be more efficient than a gasoline-powered engine. And it was, in theory. But, throughout proven effect, his engine was considered not as reliable as a gasoline engine because in colder temperatures, it was harder to start. But, it had an efficiency of about 35%, whereas a gasoline engine at that point in time was only about 20% efficient. So, his engine was more efficient than the gasoline engine.
But before we learn anything else, we need to learn the difference between a gasoline-powered engine and a diesel-powered engine. So this is a gasoline piston, which would connect to your connecting rod, and a crankshaft, which converts linear motion into rotary motion. So most gasoline engines have a mostly flat-top piston or a slightly concave piston like this one. And they have a lower compression ratio than a diesel engine. So when a gasoline engine gets on its intake stroke, it sucks in fuel and air across the intake valve. And then it comes up and a spark plug fires, and that's what gives you your ignition, and that puts you on the power stroke and then the exhaust stroke. So a gasoline engine doesn't have as much compression as a diesel engine because they use a spark plug to fire their fuel. Now a diesel engine, on the other hand, has a concave piston or a pre-combustion chamber and a flat top piston. Now the reason that is because when the piston comes up to top dead center of the stroke, fuel is injected into the superheated air because the compression ratio is so high that it ignites the fuel instantaneously. But that gives a diesel engine a more efficient and clean burn than a gasoline engine. So a gasoline-powered engine can only reach about 30% efficiency, but large two-stroke diesel engines that are in large marine craft or something of that type that's 5,000 horsepower or beyond can reach a efficiency rate of 50% because lower RPM, more torque, and they have a cleaner burn. A gasoline engine in a modern car requires catalytic converters to convert its emissions so it can pollute less. Whereas a diesel engine of the same displacement with no emissions, like a catalytic converter, will actually have less emissions. But a downfall of the diesel engine is that they make soot.
But in the mid-1920s, to prove that a gasoline engine is less efficient than a diesel engine, Plessy Cummins, the inventor of Cummins, which is now a very well-known diesel engine brand, put a diesel engine in a car and traveled across the United States on only $60 worth of fuel, which back in 1925, to go across the United States with a petrol car or a gasoline-powered car, it would have cost you more like $120 to go all the way across the United States because originally diesel fuel was cheaper than gasoline because it costs less to refine diesel fuel. So why is diesel fuel more expensive now than it was back in the 1920s? Well, for a simple reason. It's more efficient. Diesel has a higher energy in 1 ounce of fuel than gasoline. So oil companies, decided that it would be more profitable for them to raise the price of diesel fuel, which is why diesel fuel now costs more than gasoline. But it has much more energy in a small amount of fuel than gasoline does. But how does it work? Diesel engines work on purely compression. They compress air with the piston, and that superheats the gas that's in there. It's in the cylinder, and that ignites your fuel. But
why do diesels have such a bad reputation for a very dirty exhaust? Well, it's a simple fact. Too many people turn the fuel up on their diesel pickup, diesel semi-truck, or boat, and that's what makes it smoke. A properly tuned diesel engine should not smoke at all. Maybe just a tiny little bit, but that's it. So they're more efficient than a gasoline engine because their fuel has a higher concentration of energy than gasoline. But if gasoline is more readily available and cheaper than diesel fuel, why is diesel a common choice for manufacturers to put in semi-trucks, boats, RVs, school buses, and any other thing that delivers anything to any store throughout the United States? Well, it's a simple fact. A diesel engine under the same load will get better fuel mileage than a gasoline engine of the same displacement. A gasoline engine does not have the same amount of torque that a diesel engine has. And diesels nowadays all have turbochargers. Gasoline engines, some of them don't have turbos, but some auto manufacturers are now putting turbochargers on gasoline engines. Take Ford, for example, with their 3.5 liter twin turbo EcoBoost. They put 2 turbos on a 3.5 liter V6 because it gets better gas mileage and more horsepower. Ford can get 455 horsepower out of a small V6, which is unheard of out of a V6 until now. And they can also get upwards of 22 miles per gallon out of that engine. The reason being, the more air you can put into an engine, the more power you can make with less fuel, because the higher compression ratio you have, the less fuel is needed to make more power.
So for the simple fact of efficiency with less fuel, that is why a diesel engine is now the most common engine in the world. There are more diesel engines than gasoline engines in the world. Anything you see going down the road that has a GVWR of 26,000 pounds or greater has a diesel engine. Semi-trucks, buses, trains, anything of that sort of nature that's big and hauls a lot of things or a lot of weight, they have a diesel engine because they're more efficient than a gasoline engine.
Just a fun fact before I end this video. This piston is out of a 1947 Caterpillar D7G, and it weighs about 40 pounds. So people might ask, how is a heavy piston like that more efficient than a gasoline engine's piston, which is much lighter? Well, diesel engines have to have heavier components than gasoline engines. Therefore, they last longer. The more material you have inside your engine, the longer it's going to last. That's just physics. So, gasoline engines can't last as long as a diesel engine. A diesel engine in a semi-truck can last up to 1,000,000 miles before it needs rebuilt. Whereas a gasoline engine, you can only get possibly 300,000 miles out of it before it needs rebuilt. That is another reason why diesel engines are chosen to be put in heavy machinery or trucks, because they last so much longer than a gasoline engine would.
Thank you for watching. I hope you learned something you didn't know before. And remember, stay tuned to the Mr. Minty Redneck YouTube channel. Bye-bye.